guys, so this is looking at the backstick exercise, which I think is one of the first ones that they do. I don't know if it was the very first warm-up exercise. Backstick, the ones in the books are a little bit larger than this, maybe that much more. All you really need to be able to do is to reach out as far as you can, have enough room to cover that, which I barely do, and that's about it. You'll sort of be going inwards only about this far. So if you wanted to take two broomsticks and tie them together or duct tape them, you don't need to worry about that middle bit. That can be as messy as you need. And the first thing is, I don't know if I outlined it before, but basically I'm trying to break down these exercises into three different phases, parts, postures. I'm not too sure about what I'm going to call them yet. So the first one basically is kind of like going into a squat. It's your hips are opening and your shoulders are also opening. Your feet, you're kind of digging in with the outsides of the feet, supinating, using that, I don't know, is it the last metatarsal, the first metatarsal? I don't know. I should look that up. So hips are opening, shoulders are opening, going up and back, down and back. Supinating on the hands and feet. And basically it's kind of like you're going into a squat. Except obviously you're not moving. If you were to start bending the legs and go down, which you do eventually in the extension motions, what you'll do is you'll get to about here. And you've got two choices. If you're a ballet dancer, you would go up on your heels, you go down. I'm not a ballet dancer, so I suck. Or if you're doing a weightlifting squat, you would let the butt go back. Once you got past that kind of choke point. We don't go anywhere near that with the setup drill. Everything is straight-legged. So there'll be an intention of the tailbone extending backwards, but it should never actually get past, really there. And that's sort of being arrested. If it's trying to go back, the opening of the hips kind of prevents that from happening. And you'll feel that kind of conflict as you get on in the exercises. So in a way you could kind of call it a supination phase, global supination, in the sense that both the hands and the feet are supinating and the shoulders and the hips are also opening, which facilitates that supination. So to make it easy, we'll call it the supination phase, global supination. And then obviously the next one is going to be the opposite of that. So if you were doing a squat, you would reverse everything to come up. So the hips would then close, shoulders would close or rotate inwards, depending on how you like your metaphors or your movement cues. Hands will switch to pronation and the feet also. So you're pushing into the first metatarsal and then the first foot metatarsal. I can't remember. And again, you can think about it as sort of rising from a squat, but I know Dan at least isn't fond of that analogy. It might not be accurate. Use it sparingly and for as short a time as possible. But if it gives you that sense of going from that kind of supinating to pronating. And then the third phase, you go back to supination, but you're expanding. This is the extension. I like to call it the extension. I think this is the extension that they're referring to in the extension motions. So it might also be analogous to the lockout phase of certain barbell exercises. Not sure. You'd really have to ask a weightlifter. I can do some lifts, but I'm not really a weightlifter yet. So the idea is you've this supination phase, this pronation phase, and now you're going into extension. When you first start doing it and you don't have much mobility in your hips, usually you lock and then do that with the rest of the body. And that's really what you don't want to do at all. So the idea is you want to do open the hips, open the shoulders, push forward. And the idea that you're pushing forward on the hips a little bit. So you've gone back to do a squat, you've brought them forward in the pronation phase, and now I'm pushing them forward to do that extension. But obviously I don't want to actually go forward. I want to keep everything in that straight line. And that took me quite a while to get that hip mobility to open up. That degree of hip mobility, probably you could explain it from the fact that, people squatted to poop. So if you can hold a flat-footed squat for long enough to take a dump, then, ouch, then you would have the hip mobility to do that without really having to train it specifically. That's the theory anyway. So basically, supination phase, the first one, where you're basically kind of pulling the elbows in towards the center line, kind of like you're, like you say, a squat. Think of it as a inward kind of thing. And then the reversing that, pronation, that's the second phase. And then the third phase is the extension. Kind of analogous to, first phase, you'd be in the second position, and then second phase is what you would use to block or form the feint, and then the extension would be what you do to actually lunge out or attack before using that first phase to come back, and then you pronate again and out. So that's kind of the circle. It also relates to the marching step. I'll do that later. So, right, backstick. So my slightly too short backstick, but just barely long enough. The initial exercise has you position of the soldier, the attention, which is the extension, I guess. And you do this little operation to bring it here. Basically from this position, you're rising the stick in that second phase, so the pronation phase. So you're really far out as your hands rotate inwards. They should come together a little bit as you raise it up in a circular motion. And that will be the last time you do that. And then you go into that extension phase right away. So the ordering's not great. If it's coming straight down and you don't have the required shoulder mobility to actually bring it behind your head without deforming your structure, then you're gonna bonk yourself in the head, which I do pretty much every time. And then I just kind of relax my grip, let it slip around my head, and you get it to about there, and that's the maximum extension I can do in that third phase. And then now you're going into the first phase, the supination phase, where I'm pulling everything in, and my hips are now pulling back, shoulders opening, hips opening, supinating with the hands. And that gets me to about there. That's as far as I can go. And here's where it gets a little bit weird. So instead of switching to that second thing to go back up, if you do try to rotate the shoulders inwards and pronate the hands, you lose the stick. No two ways about it. So if you're back here, what you need to do is basically stick to that first posture, position, whatever. Not position, but first phase. So now I'm extending the arms, but still opening the hips and opening the shoulders. And that's a little bit weird. I can cover that later. I'm pretty sure this is a concept similar to something in Tai Chi called withdraw to issue. And it's the idea that even though you're bringing the elbows in towards the center, you're forcing the hand outwards at the same time. And you can kind of get a sense that if you put a pivot point right there in the middle of your forearm and practice bringing the elbow in and the hand out at the same time. You'll notice you're doing that while you supinate. So you have a kind of forcing the hand out while basically using the position in which you would bring it in supination. That will be very important later, especially for a cavalry saber. So that's the way you get from this totally, the first phase, you've brought everything in, and everything is staying the same, and you're simply extending the arms instead of bringing them in. And you get back to this sort of shoulder level, and that's when you switch back to the pronation second phase to get it as far as you're gonna go. That's sort of it for me. I guess about even. I don't think you gain anything by, oh god, you shouldn't be able to bring it very close together actually. And then from that pronation phase, switch out to the extension, bonk yourself in the head, snake it around, sorry, get to about there. Supination phase, extending supination phase, making that term up as I go along. Second pronation, third extension, supination, more supination, pronation, extension. So basically I like to practice it as a way of transitioning between these three phases. Try to ignore the perhaps subdivision of the first phase in bringing it in and the hands coming out. I'm thinking of those as the same phase. You might want to play with differentiating them more. But basically I just do that on repeat. The original exercise really only has one. You go behind the back, bring it back over the head, repeat it in front of the body, and you're done. Right, so that's really, I think, it's a great way of opening the shoulders. You do definitely do some muscle work when you're doing them as a physio exercise, which is what you'll be doing, what I did for the first year of them, because my shoulders and hips suck. And it's a great way to sort of isolate those different phases, which will be very important if you want to look at the later extension motion practices or the club exercise. Okay, and that is take 2.